This is Toon Talk Weekly, episode 278. This week, Brad and I check out the 1986 series, Pound Puppies.
Welcome, doggies. Now, let's get one thing straight right off the bat.
You'll never escape from my pound. Never!
And no one can help you, not even cooler than Eggy with Puppy Pals.
Golly gee! That's us!
Fire on!
The day just keeps getting better.
Boy.
I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready.
And where is that kid?
Hey everyone, welcome back to Toon Talk Weekly. This is the weekly cartoon podcast where we chat all about cartoons. I'm Jake Williams, but I'm not the only voice you're going to hear on this show. Brought along Brad Chmielewski once again this week. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well, dude. As listeners may have known, or viewers, if you're watching over on YouTube, may have known, we batched a bunch of episodes because of our crazy, I moved to the East Coast, you were gone in Japan and China craziness, and now we're back, and I don't remember how to do this show.
Right, we're here. We look exactly the same. You just have a different background. So nothing has changed or really sounds any different to anyone that's tuning in.
Right. Oh, was that? I see what you did there. Nice. Yeah, kind of weird to be back chatting again. It's like when you. I don't think we've ever in any of the podcasts we've hosted a number of podcasts together, and I don't think we've ever batched that many at a time to need to work around our own schedules.
Yeah, it was kind of. It was useful, I guess, because of that. So they were all done, and then they were for everyone, so no one missed and no one messaged, where's this week's episode?
Right, and I mean, that's always the thing is, like, I always love consistency. Like, whether or not every podcast is a winner, because they technically will not all, the nature of a weekly show, and heck, dude, there's daily shows I listen to, and they're not all great. But, like, people need to know when to expect a show and when they're going to get it, and that's why I like to try to get y'all shows on Tuesday mornings, because that's what we've been doing for 5 years now. So
Right.
That made it better. But man, how was the trip? Any cartoon watching while you were gone in Japan and China?
No, I never turned on a TV when I was there. There was plenty of like anime theme, like toys, tons of capsule toys around everywhere. Signage that had stuff for like One Piece and Pokemon things, but I never watched anything.
Yeah, so it wasn't a case where you were actually sitting down to watch anything. You guys also like went all over the place, so it's not like you had downtime to kill.
Our friend Brett Stark, who's been on this podcast as well, when we did was it Robin?
Ruby?
A long time ago. Ruby.
Yeah.
He went to one of the stores to pick up or to look for like figures from some anime he's watching, and I didn't go in with him when he was wandering around this place, but he was looking for something that was apparently pretty new for in the market as well. Like it recently aired in Japan and the US kind of alongside. It might have been a Netflix show. I don't remember exactly, but he said some of those toys were like sold out. There's popular characters that you can't get very often. But he did notice that a lot of the ones that maybe he liked or that anyone would have heard of in the United States, those toys and action figures do not exist unless they are the One Piece, Naruto, Pokemon.
So
if there's like an anime that was mildly popular that you liked, it's gone. Like it's not even in the consciousness anymore.
Interesting. So even the big stuff.
Like Dragon Ball Z is still around, but like that's probably about it.
Well, and to be fair, that show is re-airing sort of now, right? It's got a new series.
There's like Gundam stuff that you'll see every now and then because Gundam's like just a big thing, but yeah, nothing.
So it's literally only like whatever the hottest, newest thing is there, and no like classics.
Right. It would be, if you think about it, like we don't have, I don't know, you don't see toys or board games for shows that aired in the early 2000s at like Target or things like that. It's the equivalent of that. Like they have so much animated programming. It's just like it's out the door and the new ones here are ready. So let's go.
Interesting, man. That's kind of nuts. Like I wonder if there's got to be a collector mentality in the Eastern world too, I would have to imagine. But like I feel like the idea of the collector nerd stuff is very prevalent here because you can go to just about any city and there's going to be a store with like old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff and like stuff you'd remember and obscure things. And I wonder if that's just a Western culture thing or more of one. And maybe because I'm also interested in it, I know those things exist.
Yeah, but there's so much stuff you can buy, so much just junk. Every action figure is available in multiple sizes. You can get them in phone cases as cord holder. I don't know, everything. And it's just crazy that Japanese people tend to have smaller homes. That's just the nature of how many people live there. It's kind of ridiculous. Where do they put all this stuff that these people buy? Like, come on, you have to be some like crazy hoarders if you live in Japan, right?
Or they just might not buy as much.
Maybe, but there's so much. Like if you've ever gone into, I don't know, any like Toys R Us before they all shut down here and you're like, oh my God, there's all this stuff. If I had the money, I might buy these toys. But this is every freaking store is Toys R Us.
Well, I'm sad you didn't get to watch any cartoons while you were there, but at least you experienced some characters you'd recognize from screens, whether they were games or anime and all that stuff. While you were gone, we've been talking about it for a very long time, but Castlevania Season 2 is now out. I have not gotten to check it out yet, but I've heard nothing but good things from we have like a gaming Discord, and everybody seems to love it. Like I feel like they knocked it out of the park again with this show.
Nice, okay.
Which is cool because I feel like when it came out and we talked about it, there were only those 4 episodes, and everybody was already calling it. Even Metacritic was like, "This is literally the best TV or film adaptation of a game ever," because I think they don't let the game or its mechanics necessarily get in the way of trying to just tell a good story in a world. And that's what seems pretty cool. And then, you know, obviously we've got the BlizzCon happened this past weekend, and they announced a game that everyone was really sad about, but we've got down the road, theoretically, this Diablo show that might come out, and that could also be pretty sweet. So,
oh, cool.
But it'll be interesting. Like, I could see Diablo being this, like, dark, gritty world. I could see that feeling very similar to Castlevania, so I'm like, oh, man, I don't want, like, the 2 most successful video game, like, cartoons ever to be, like, both just, like, demonic, you know, like, the same flavor.
Yeah, but if it works, it works, right?
Yeah. So definitely got to get into that because that came out. But this week, we're probably talking about the furthest thing possible from Japanese culture and Castlevania and all that stuff. We're talking about 1986 Pound Puppies. This show was actually, fun fact behind the scenes, little peek behind the curtain here. This show was on the docket for about 4 episodes ago. But Hilda came out, and we really needed to talk about Hilda because it was a really great show.
And I watched all of that.
Oh, yeah. You finished it all? Does it? Is there an arc overall? I only caught a couple more.
There is a good arc. I feel like towards the end of the season, I started to lose a little bit of interest, although the world is still really exciting, but I got a little less, I don't know, not caring, just like burnt out on it. I was like, okay, where's this going? They kind of ended at a good spot where you're like, okay, next season I can see where they're going to pick it up. But it didn't, I feel like it didn't jump far enough to like, what's next?
Right. Interesting. Okay, I'll have to try to finish that up too. I'm in this like weird vortex right now where it's like suddenly so many shows I need to check out, and I feel like I've watched 1 episode of everything. And that's not good. I'm not finishing stories. But this week's Pound Puppies was a 1986 series. There's, of course, been a 2010 Pound Puppy series since then. We're talking about the old original one. The second season, they actually repackaged it and rebranded it and called it All New Pound Puppies, which is technically what we watched. And apparently my Siri thinks I asked a question about 50 Cent and told me he was an American rapper or something.
Nice. Nailed it.
I can't even... This is the worst radio.
But yeah, it is interesting that this is the rebranded all new Pound Puppies. It does have I want to say, better look to it than I remember Pound Puppies. I remember it being a little more loose and gritty. I had Pound Puppy toys and stuffed animals growing up, so I was very familiar with the franchise, I guess.
So I remember the character of Cooler, like the main guy who's like the white dog with the blue puffy jacket, right? I remember him. However, watching this cartoon, was the stuff with the show always that they were like helping dogs get out of a pound? I mean, that would make sense.
I believe so. The problem is this show and like Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats, they basically, and Garfield were all on around the same time. So your memories of like the adventures sort of blend together. But I do feel like I remember the Pound Puppies being on the loose more. But the show makes sense that they're the Pound Puppies, so they're at the pound, right?
Right. Yeah. But it's so strange. Like, I guess I didn't put those two together, or I didn't spend a lot of time with them as a kid. That I was like, oh, it makes sense. They're in the pound. But also, my first thought when I watched this show was, man, do you really date your cartoon when you have a dog catcher?
Right. Yeah.
It's just kind of interesting. So before we were interrupted by the iPad, I was mentioning that the second season was actually called the All New Pound Puppies, and apparently between seasons, they even changed features and characteristics of certain characters, which was kind of interesting to make them seem a little bit differently. And I'm not sure if it was just like trying to attract an audience thing, but I found that interesting.
As you dive into, like you were talking about the title and the characters here, after you watch one or two episodes, you quickly realize this show just has a formula, and you know what's going to happen. They're going to rescue someone from the pound and give them a home, right? Yeah. It's like, so it's got to be the easiest show to write.
It's like, yeah, so it's very A to B. And we'll get in like more detail when we talk about the episode we watched today. The series created by Hanna-Barbera Productions, based on the toy line by Tonka. I find it really funny that Tonka is the ones that made this. They're like, we make trucks, and by the way, also make a few puppy toys.
You gotta put your puppies in trucks to drive them around.
That's what they're like, listening to country songs, and they're like, what are these about? Trucks and puppies. Let's do that. 2 seasons, 26 total episodes, and it aired on ABC. Of course, features a lot of the famous Pound Puppy characters that you probably would have heard of, like Cooler, Nosemarie, Howler, who's the inventor, Whopper's like the little baby kid, and then, of course, Bright Eyes was another popular character. But so the episode we checked out this week was Season 2, Episode 2. So I guess technically it falls under the all-new Pound Puppies, which is very strange because the title card did not mention that, but the voice did. Like, the voice mentioned, like, and now back to the all-new Pound Puppies. So it's like they slapped it on there. Season 2, Episode 2, the very first episode here is called Tale of the Pup. Tail spelled T-A-I-L, right? So, tail, right? And this one starts right off, man. I wanted to talk a little bit about the designs and stuff. Obviously, it has a sign of the times, the art style, and kind of what to expect, especially like compositions. Grabbing screenshots for the show is incredibly difficult because a lot of 80 cartoons, like, just full front and center, like super zoomed in on like a character action or like a character raising his head up to talk or something, and so like everything's very cramped. Yeah. But what I really liked, 2 things that stuck out to me in this episode were, I love I should have written down her name, so this is awful, but the lady who runs the pound, the evil woman.
Cruella de Vil?
Is that actually her? Or basically
no,
her? Yeah.
I think it's Katrina something.
Her character design is great. There's like some really exaggerated like shapes with her that make her feel truly evil. And also their cat. I feel like the cat had a really interesting shape where he was like a big fat cat with like a tiny head and tiny neck.
Yeah.
It was really, I thought you'd like that too. So essentially this episode starts with, like Brad was saying, I have to imagine this is a pretty common thing. A bunch of new puppies arrive to the pound. And they're, of course, all petrified.
Because, yeah, no one wants to go to the pound. You only hear bad things about the pound. That's kind of, isn't that like an awful thing? Like, no one thinks highly of the pound.
Yeah, but do pounds
jail,
exist
right?
anymore? Yeah, kind of.
it's puppy jail or it's dog jail.
Well, even like if your car was taken in, it's impounded. I think that's where the name came from, right? That you're that. But yeah, like I think people, or at least the world that they're building here in Pound Puppies, is that the Pound is a place where stray dogs go. So the problem is, of course, like if you want to be more nuanced, however, this is an 80s cartoon, so that didn't exist. If you wanted to talk about like why the puppies are there, they could have just simply ran away from home. It doesn't make them a bad dog or a dirty dog or anything like that. So anyway, a bunch of new puppies end up at the Pound in the beginning of this episode. And originally you get the vibe, I actually felt like this was a pretty good introductory episode if you haven't watched it in a while or didn't know about the series. You get the vibe that they're just stuck there forever. And the Cruella de Vil equivalent here, she basically has this robo dog whose job is to basically chew things up and just basically shreds them out when it poops them out.
Into a cage. Whatever he eats is now pooped out into a cage.
Yeah. And so it sounds like her plan here is basically like, well, once I get this thing all fixed up, I'm putting you puppies in this, and then there'll be no more stray dogs. So she's...
Right, but she also wants to use it to catch Cooler and his gang.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, her arch rivals, right? Man,
right.
How
which
bad
is sad that
Good.
The human, her arch nemesis, is a group of dogs.
Because no person wants to hang out with her. She found someone else to be mad at. I was just thinking, like, how bad would her Yelp reviews be? Like, this woman runs the place with dogs. And she hates dogs. This is incredible. But very shortly after these puppies arrive, she's like, not even the Pound Puppies are going to save you. And of course they do. They basically they have a system of tunnels and this amazing hideout underneath the Pound.
Yeah, there's slides. There are very high-tech gadgets. There is some sort of conference room that has a wizard in it. I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff happening underground.
Yeah, and it reminded me of a cooler version of the Shirt Tails tunnel system.
Mm-hmm. Basically, it's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles kind of layer, but more put together.
But clean.
Yeah, not the sewer.
Side note: this has nothing to do with this cartoon, but I thought the other day about the episode of Turtles we watched, mainly because they go down to the sewer. And the Rat King is surprised, and he's like, no, this is my pizza. Get out of here. He doesn't care what they're there for. He just doesn't want them to take his pizza, and it made me laugh, just by myself.
Nice.
Anyway, it's back to Pound Puppies. So one of the puppies here, they basically promised them, they're like, look, we're going to find you good homes to be able to get out of here so that you won't have to deal with this crazy lady. But one of the puppies has this bent, basically broken tail, and the tail won't wag. And, of course... all puppies, dogs are excited and their tails wag and stuff. And so originally they say, we're going to have to do surgery. That thankfully doesn't happen. I wouldn't want to see how that happened. They try as many things as they possibly can think of. They attempt to bring him to this fun room to try to look at all these fun things the dogs would be into to get your tail to wag, and it totally doesn't work.
You're barking up the wrong tree, Whopper.
Hal doesn't need a new tail. He needs a reason to wag his own tail.
So, let's give him a reason. Let's cheer up this pup.
Oh, cheering up is my specialty. Then Bright Eyes, do your stuff. All right. Come on, pal. Quit your dragging. Time to set your tail wagging. Let's have fun. No more gloom. Welcome to the Rumpus Room. Wow. This is where we pups go to wag our tails and have a blast. So let's blast off.
They even meet up with Howler, the inventor, to try to get his tail to wag too, and that doesn't quite work. It's not until they basically they basically have a way of showing, this is the magician, or the clairvoyant, palm reader, basically, right?
That was there's puppy power, and you know what? I'm going to magically show you an image of this kid that needs a puppy.
Yeah.
Or needs a friend, because his friend moved away.
Yeah. And so somehow we can see that from here, from the puppy's lair, and he ends up wagging his tail a bunch. His problem is solved here because he just wants to please this person. He just wants to make this sad kid happy, which, as a dog owner myself, I can say is what dogs want to do. They just want to make you happy. That's it.
Yeah, it's equivalent to a broken heart kind of thing, right? There's only really one thing that's going to fix it, no matter like gadgets or whatever people try to show you, it's not going to solve this until like the moment happens, right?
Right. So that's kind of interesting way to like tie it together. I was so confused because it took so long to get into the story about the puppy's tail being broken. So long, meaning like, I don't know, 2-3 minutes, but in an 11-minute episode, that I was like, what is happening? What did the title have to do with this? And then, of course, it made sense at the end. The second part of this episode, season 2, episode 2, is called King Whopper. And essentially, a very well-meaning and seemingly like wealthy, happy family is looking to, expand their family. And so they come to the pound looking for a dog. And they're basically told to go away.
Yeah, all of our dogs are spoken for. Get out of here. Get.
Yeah, she gets pleasure in like ripping up this guy's business card. But the Pound Puppies say, that's not okay. And there's this perfectly good dog right here who just wants to go to a nice family. Mm-hmm. And so the episode begins to be this story of Cooler takes the puppy and puts the business card together, the puppy rather, that is going to go to this family. And they set off. Now that they have this business card, they can go find where they live and he can bring the puppy to them. So in the meantime, he puts Whopper, the little kid, in charge.
Basically the baby.
Yeah, basically the baby. And it goes about as well as you think it would go. He very quickly, like within a couple of scenes, becomes a drill sergeant, like a military sergeant, demanding that everybody like draw pictures of him because like all great leaders have great pictures. It's very like dictatory is really what he becomes.
1, 2, 3, 4, uppity hop! As you now know, I have been made boss of the pound. No, the world. No, the universe. Yeah, that's it. So do what I say. And I say you must all start digging for the brand new big, huge, giant Ford Whopper. I'm starting to like this Vader business.
He makes them like dig out giant caves to be able to create these new tunnel systems, but also like sculpt giant stone statues in his image. And it's not until he just keeps like, eventually he even puts on like a crown and pretends he's the king of everyone. And it's like, hey, nothing goes wrong here. Like, it's just me. And he envisions himself as like a brand. Like, oh, my face is going to be on like dog bones and dog bowls and all this other stuff. It's very much the idea of like, you think as a kid, if you imagine being like a king or like a military guy, you just think you're the leader with no consequence. And you're supposed to act a certain way. And everything goes wrong, of course. Eventually, the other puppies revolt, and they're like, no, hell no, I'm not going to keep doing this. This is crazy. And it's by the time that Cooler finally gets back after bringing this dog to this new family that he's like, what did I do? I should have never left you here. This is the worst possible way it could go. The resolution of the episode ends up being that obviously that dog found the family, but they were, after Whoppers realized the error of his ways here and that he was driving everybody insane being this leader, they were wondering what happened with all the dirt that they dug out of this giant cave. And the evil lady goes home, and then suddenly her house like fills with sand, and it's like a tidal wave. She flies out. So it's like, that's what you do with all the dirt. Yeah. So pretty interesting. It was a little bit weird because we always talk about cartoons having A and B stories. However, this one, dude, was like 10 seconds at a time cutting back and forth between the stories. And I was like, Jesus, slow down.
Oh, yeah, because where our first part of this episode had an A story.
Yeah.
It was I guess it had an A and a B, right? It had to get the dog's tail to wag. And then the B story was this machine that was going to eat Cooler and his gang.
Right. But it was understated. This was like, I would say, I guess the King Whopper bit was the A bit, and the B story was like taking the dog to this new family. But still, it just felt like they were cutting back and forth a lot. But anyway, this was not a show I'd ever watched before. Brad, what did you think of this show?
I like Pound Puppies, not enough that I'm going to like keep watching it, but like it does make you feel good watching it. Like there are no moments where you don't want the human to get the puppy, right? Like you want the puppy to have a home and get out of the pound, and you want the human to be happy. So you're like always feeling good with the outcome because you know the pound puppies are going to succeed.
Yeah.
Their mission will be complete for the day.
I mean, you just described my life philosophy. I mean, that's pretty much it.
But I want to know, so we had the show Pound Puppies, and we have a lot of other things from the 80s, like 50s to the 80s that involve like dog catchers and things like that. How rampant were dogs during this time that like there was a dog catcher and there was pound, like they're just like running all over the place? Was this just the Wild West of animals?
Yeah, were people not as like, I would like to go back to a time when rampant puppies were the biggest problem, right? Or rampant dogs. But B, it's like, yeah, were people just like care less about their dog? Not care like you didn't care or love them or anything, but just like, oh, you didn't tie them up. You just left them out and they'll be fine. And so many dogs just found a way to get out.
I guess it was like, my dog has to go to the bathroom. I opened the door. He didn't come back. I don't know what happened.
Oh, well, we'll get another one. Yeah, I didn't bother looking. I mean, dude, growing up, we had a cat. I think this happened to us several times, actually. We had a cat. We just, our cats were outdoors, and we just let him go. Eventually, our cat just went to someone else's house, and it became that person's cat. Like, it just never came back down the street.
I did have that happen to us, and then we got our cat back from that. I was like, this is our cat.
Oh, man, this cat just went there and started living there because I think the person started giving him food. And we're like, all right, well, that used to be our cat. We just see him every so often.
Yeah.
What do you think? I don't know. Anyway.
But rampant dogs. It was a problem. And so we needed a show to...
We needed a whole toy franchise to let people know that this was a profession later in life, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, it's definitely the show, much of the Hanna-Barbera stuff, especially this time period, like feels like it's in this time capsule where nothing in the show feels truly like an antagonist. Nothing feels truly scary. I feel like we have a more black and white look at that these days, where you can really change the vibe of a show by making something truly creepy or scary or whatever. But these people didn't feel like evil. Like the woman running the pound, she kind of just felt like dumb.
Yeah, or just a jerk, right?
Yeah. So
and you knew she would never win. Mm-hmm. Like, although she runs the pound, she runs a very good pound because she has dogs that work for her for free. Like,
I was gonna say she probably runs the best pound because there's never any puppies to adopt. They all just find homes.
Right? Yeah. She doesn't have to find homes. She just has to make sure the electricity turns on.
Yeah. So kind of interesting to revisit it. I'm not going to write home about this being the best show of all time, but for a product of its day, I think it's a pretty interesting show. Mm-hmm. It's definitely good. Like, I think if nothing else, it's been nice once in a while too. New shows are great, but sometimes it's just a vibe to older shows that remind you of being how awesome being 10 years old was. And
yeah, exactly. This does that. You just want to sit on the floor and just I don't know, just have nothing to worry about and watch Pound Puppies all day. Yeah, kind of thing.
No, for sure. Well, cool, man. I think you recommended it, so I got to thank you for bringing it to the table. This is definitely not a Jake show, even though I'm the dog owner here. Let's get out of here. Where can people find you, Brad, when you're not recording Toon Talk Weekly?
So you can follow me on Twitter. It's @brad, and then my blog, digitalhitchhiker.com.
Check them out over there, guys. You can follow me on Twitter @JacobWilliams. And, of course, if you want to follow the show, we're all over the place. Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram, YouTube. I think I said them all. We're @Toon Talk Weekly. Got that name all over the place. ToonTalkWeekly@gmail.com. Let us know if you have any thoughts on the show or other Pound Puppies episodes or things about that cartoon and specifically that you'd want us to know. Feel free to send us an email at toontalkweekly@gmail.com. And finally, toontalkweekly.com is the main hub for the show. You can find any and all episodes up to this point over on the website. So, so now that we're back in the swing of things, figuring all this out, we don't know what shows next week, so we'll have to find something. It feels like we were on a string there of watching every brand new cartoon, so we might be digging all over the place again here.
And that were dragon themed brand new shows.
Oh my goodness! After we watched Dragon Pilot, I was like, I know this is probably the lesser of the two dragon shows that just launched, but it was actually pretty hilarious. I don't know why.
Speaking of that show, real quick before we got here, we made a joke about how like modern it was, like making fun of flip phones and vape, and the dude was vaping. Man, so many people smoke in Japan, and there's vape vending machines for your cartridges. Like that was just like lots of vape stuff.
You're like, dude, I'm in an episode of Dragon Pilot as we speak.
Basically, yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll have to see if they do any more modern vaping anime anytime soon. How has there not been a cartoon yet, and maybe there has been, where somebody, like the main kid, like starts vaping and it turns out it's like a friggin' genie or something? You know, like...
That doesn't happen, but there's a recent episode of South Park where Cartman and Butters sell vape pens to the kindergarteners. So.
God, that's a perfect segue. We're going to be back next week, as we always are. Thanks for joining us with another cartoon.
Take care.
To learn more about the show, visit toontalkweekly.com or follow us on Twitter at Toon Talk Weekly.